Okay. Are you wanting to share your screen at all, Dr. Patton?
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to say, just let me know when you're ready and I will.
Go ahead.
Let's see.
The
One.
dates in the chat.
Oh, I was like, where did y'all go? There you are, way over there. Maybe back over here so I can see you in front of my camera. All right. Do you want to wait another minute or you think we're good or?
Yeah, let's wait just one more minute in case. Let me finish typing up the rest of these.
My allergies, that wind today, was it terrible here? I mean,
Yeah, my
Dr.
daughter came home with
Hawley-Bernardez is like just
super
a few
red
minutes down
cheeks.
the road.
Just got a little stinker.
It was terrible. I was
Well,
looking out, my tree was like leaning halfway over. It's like, oh my gosh.
it was storming over here, and I think a tornado hit one of
Oh
my
gosh.
staff's. A tree fell on their car or something. So
Oh
I'm
my goodness.
like, what?
Thanks.
Wow.
Hi, excuse me,
April.
PhD
Yes,
candidate.
candidate.
Hello, thank you all.
Yes, congrats.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So good to see each of you.
You too, April.
Yeah, I'm
Hey.
excited to learn about CVs and cover letters. I was gonna
Yeah.
hound Dr. HB about it and Dr. Pat next week about it, but I'm glad we have a chance to talk about it tonight.
Do you have CSWE interviews at all?
You know, I don't have interviews, but I am definitely looking forward to going to the conference. And I didn't even know people, honestly, I haven't even applied for any jobs, but there is a place that I adjunct at, and the chair has been emailing me about applying for this position that was going to come open. And so now the position, apparently, two of them had came open this past Monday. And so he emails just today, hey, the positions have come open now. We really want you to apply. And so, but I think they want me to, one of them is like online. One of them, they want me to relocate. So I'm like, how about that relocation stuff? So I don't know if you, Dr. Patton, I don't think y'all had to relocate, did you? But this is an online program. Why are they making me want to relocate for one of the positions?
Yeah, I mean,
So
I did relocate at first before I moved to being remote. So that's definitely
it's
part of the
common.
negotiation package.
Ah, yeah.
And it's not, unfortunately, not uncommon,
Oh.
even for online faculty in an online program, for some reason they want you on campus. And so, I mean, that's what took me so long to get here, is because everything was always, no, you got to move, you got to move, you got to move. And so, yeah, so that's not uncommon still, unfortunately.
What school is it with, April?
So this is University of North Alabama.
Okay.
Mhm.
Nice.
I think I
Yeah.
yeah. I think I
Yeah.
just
Now,
saw the job announcement go out.
you've heard of them?
Yeah, I think I saw just their job announcement
Yeah.
come through.
Yeah, it literally just posted on Monday. So I don't know. We'll see if I apply.
Yeah, well, we should chat more and
Definitely.
I definitely think you would have a strong chance. So and let's get you on the job market. You would be a phenomenally strong candidate. So
Well,
Maybe.
all the tips I can
Specifically,
get.
if they're calling you and telling you about the job.
mhm.
That's the thing too. But also I don't know. I mean, I was able to adjunct there this past 8 weeks because they have the 8 week classes, and so I imagine that's probably where that came from. just for me having that opportunity to do some adjunct work there for the past
Well, I
8
mean, we
weeks.
don't really reach out to our adjuncts that much and encourage them to apply. So I think that's a good
Not,
sign for you.
Yeah.
yeah.
Because
Thank
it's a
you
Well,
big
all
yeah,
for.
jump to go
especially
from,
knowing that.
sorry, go ahead, Dr. Patton.
No, I was going to say, knowing that you are a doctoral candidate, that makes a difference, right? So if you're adjunct and you have a master's degree and you have an adjunct that's a doctoral candidate, then definitely, because they know your work and they've seen the quality that you bring and how you fit. So yeah,
Hmm,
that's good. Yay.
thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, all
I
good
just feel, I
things,
think I
all
just
good things.
think my CV needs a lot of work. I don't know how Michelle feels about it and Danielle, but I'm like, please look at my CV. Help me out.
It is a lot of work.
Yes. And
Yes,
it
it
is
is.
something that you will continue to work on literally your
Forever.
entire career because you need
Hmm.
this for promotion and tenure, for your tenure dossier. I mean, just everything. So
Yeah.
these are important skills and information to have. So, Dr. Patton, thank you so much for joining us. I will let you take it away.
All right. Well, thank you. Welcome, everybody. And I thank you so much for coming tonight. I appreciate you being here. And I'm very excited to talk about, I know it may not be a riveting subject for CVs and cover letters, but I am very excited to talk about it because it is a part of who we are as faculty and what we do to get the positions that we get. And knowing that we can talk about it and discuss what goes in the CV, what goes in the cover letter, and kind of give you all some heads up and some tips to use to help strengthen your own is very exciting to me. So I appreciate you coming. I wanted to talk a little bit because I know we do have some PhD students in the program that are not looking for academic positions or looking for positions outside of academia. And our students who are even looking for an academic position are probably more familiar with a resume than they would be a CV. So I just kind of wanted to very, very briefly just compare the two for a minute before we go deep into the CV and the cover letter. So let me see if I can get there it goes. Okay, yay. I clicked twice. I was afraid it went too far. All right, so I just kind of put these side by side so we can kind of look at them and talk about them a little bit. Typically, when we talk about a resume, that's for a non-academic position, and typically, not always, but sometimes you'll see some companies may ask for a CV, but typically that's when we talk about CVs, we're talking about academic positions. And so probably one of the biggest differences between the two is the length of the document itself. There are guidelines around resumes that is maybe 1 or 2 pages maximum. But with the CV, what we're looking at, it's a document of your entire history of experiences throughout academia. And so while it may start out 2 or 3 pages long, the idea is the longer you're in academia, the longer that CV is going to grow because we never take anything off of there. And that may sound crazy, but the reason we don't is because what we need to show in academia is a history of our work and how our work is progressing over time, where we're researching, where our teaching has been, where our contributions of service have been. All of that is shown over a history of time. And the reason that's important, not just in the job, market and when you're applying for jobs, but when you are applying for your tenure and promotion, the tenure committee needs to see that progression of work over time, where you've been, where you're at, and where you're headed, and that's what they're looking for on that CV. And so that's why the CV is so incredibly long. But some other differences are the kinds of things, the content that we put in the CV versus the content that you typically put in your resume. I will say this as a doctoral student, what I've heard and what I've seen in research is that if you are intending to not apply for an academic position, so you're going for a non-academic position and you have a resume, what you really, really need to do is find a way to highlight your transferable skills that you have learned as a doctoral student, highlighting that on your resume. So things like leadership or teamwork or project management, those kinds of things, because you can't assume that someone in a non-academic position realizes that those are the kinds of skills that you've learned and developed during your time in a doctoral program. So you need to highlight that on your resume. So I'm not an expert on resumes. I know way more about the CV because that's been my background for the last 12 years and keeping that thing updated every year and making the changes I need to. So if you are thinking about a non-academic position, I would strongly, strongly encourage you to get with someone that can advise you on how to build the resume and to create a cover letter that highlights the skills that you've learned and developed as a doctoral student. So these are just some of the major differences between the two. Again, mostly the link, and then some of the content you'll see is a little bit different also. I want to change. There you go. It scares me because I clicked twice and then I'm afraid it's going to go too far. Okay, all right, so on to the CV itself, just to kind of look at it a little closer. What I put on the right side of the screen is just sort of an outline, if you will, of what the CV looks like. And then on the left-hand side, I've just put a little bit of tips. So what I want to do is sort of focus on the sections, and that's what my outline is. It's just sort of sections that are common and sort of expected to be seen in the CV itself. And then I'll talk a little bit about the writing tips. And so, and kind of, I want to talk also about how to organize information under these sections in the CV. So with that said, the first thing I want to point out is this. In academia, and you guys probably already know this, but I'll point it out because I want to point it out in relation to the CV. So when we're working in a faculty position and we do performance reviews and we're talking about tenure and promotion packets and reviews and that sort of thing, there are three main areas that that we're looked at. The things that we do are looked at, and that is our teaching, our research, and our service. And so if you look at the curriculum vitae outline, you can kind of see that's exactly what we're highlighting in our curriculum vitae. So we talk about the courses that we taught. So that's our teaching and what we've taught and how we've taught it. We talk about our research and our scholarly work, which is our publications and grants, conference presentations, and other kinds of scholarly activities. And then we talk about our service, and our service is to the work that we do in committees. And that's university-wide committees, that can be departmental committees, that can also be professional organizations who have committees and the work that you do in that. It can be, service can also be in organizations outside of academia, nonprofits in your community that you might work with, using your skills that you've learned as a doctoral student. So all of those things, those are the three areas that we are assessed on for our for hiring, but also for tenure and promotion. And so that's what we're trying to highlight in the CV. So at the top of the CV, big bold letters, curriculum vitae to identify the documents. Some of this is tradition, right? It's not, it's like, it feels kind of silly sometimes to talk about it, but it's tradition and that's what we do. So curriculum vitae, your full name, any credentials that you have, licensure, that sort of thing would go on the second line. And then your email, your contact information, because when a search committee gets your curriculum vita and your cover letter, they look to that top part there to see how to contact you for an interview. Now, this will date me, but old school, we used to put our address on our resumes and curriculum vitas, but that's not so much recommended anymore. And I think it was probably because we used a long time ago, it was, they would send you a letter, of an offer letter or a letter to schedule an interview. Now that's all done over email and phone calls and that sort of thing. So the home address or the mailing address is not so much recommended to put on there anymore. If you did it, I don't think anybody would care, but just so you know. So anyway, the very first section, if you will, I don't know what else to call it, but sort of each one of these, that's what I'm calling sections, and then this is what I'm calling subsections. So the very first section on the curriculum vita should always be your education, and you should list your doctoral degree, your master's degrees, and then your bachelor's degrees in that order. If you have 2 master's degrees, like I do, some people have 2 bachelor's degrees. If you may have 2 doctoral degrees, I don't know. I think one was plenty for me. But if you have more than one degree at a particular level, then you're going to want to write the most recent one first in the next one, and then move on to the next level. So you're doing it sort of the inverse: PhD, master's, and then bachelor's. For the PhD, if you have not graduated yet, then you will put in there your expected graduation date and italicize it so it's visible that this is my expected graduation date. And then your dissertation title, you'll want to put your dissertation title as a part of that education too. And that's also in italics underneath your the institution where you received your degree. Now, this is where the updating is important, because as you work on your dissertation, that expected graduation date might change. So you're going to want to make sure that you keep that updated and it's clear to whoever's looking at it when that expectation is. And your dissertation title might change. You might tweak it and mess with it. So just keep that in mind and keep it updated. If you did a thesis with a master's, you're going to want to include that thesis also, title also with your master's degree. Make sure that you include that. That's a clear indication of what your research has been and what your research interests are. So you want to make sure that you include that. All right, so another heading is awards, licensures, and sort of special certifications. And these awards are not things like grant awards or fellowships or things like that. These are these are academic awards that you might get. If it's something that sort of highlights especially a special skill that you might have, then that's an award that you want to put here. So for example, on my CV, as an undergrad, many moons ago, we had in psychology, we used to have research study competitions. And so we would go to regional conferences and compete by presenting our research. And so whoever had the best research would get first place. Well, one year I got first place. And so that's an award that I put on there. I also have my honor society, because those are awards that I got at the undergrad and master's level. And I have an online teaching award, so I've added that to the awards section. Licensure is important. A lot of job postings require, I won't say a lot. I think it kind of waxes and wanes. There was a time that it wasn't even mentioned, licensure, and then all of a sudden it was almost every job description was mentioning licensure was a requirement. And now I don't see it as much anymore. So I think it kind of comes and goes as far as that is concerned. But if you have a licensure, a social work licensure, that's where you would want to put it here. So if the university you're applying for, that's important for them, for you to have that licensure, then it would be easily identifiable here. The same with a special certification. Sometimes job descriptions will say, we are looking for faculty who can teach in this particular topic area or this particular treatment method or something of that nature. So if you have a special certification, you'll want to do that because they may be looking for someone that fits that need in their department to teach those classes or do, work on grants or do whatever it is that they need that person to do because of that special certification or special topic area. So that's what you would put under there, under the awards, licensure, and certifications. And next is the academic appointments. Now, some of our students have full-time academic appointments right now. And if you do, then you're going to want to list that full-time current academic appointment that you have. And then at some point, if you are adjuncting, so we have TAs that teach our classes, but then they move into adjunct instructors, right? So if you start adjuncting for OLU, you're going to want to list that here. If you don't have a current full-time appointment or had a full-time appointment, then you're going to want to list your adjunct instructor first, and then you can list your TA position before that, so they can see a progression of moving from a TA to an adjunct for you. So that's where you're going to want to put your academic appointments. Again, your most recent one comes first, and then everything previous to that comes after. Now, as I don't want this to seem like this is the structure that you have to follow with all of these headings. And I'll say this because, again, you've got to know your audience. You've got to know the university that you're applying for. So if you are applying for a position in a university that identifies as a teaching university, then yes, you're going to want to put the courses that you've taught first because that's their priority is teaching. It doesn't mean they don't do research, but it just means their priority is on teaching and there's some research required. If you are applying for a position that is a research university, then you're going to want to flip that and put your research or publications, your grants, conference presentations, you're going to want to put that under your academic appointments. So however the university leans, either teaching or research, you may need to flip these. But for the sake of this presentation, I'll just go straight down the line, but I just wanted to clarify that. So under the courses taught, you're going to want to list all the courses that you've taught, but you're going to want to make a distinction between undergraduate and graduate courses. And the reason for that is because some job postings will say they want faculty who have experience at both levels or one or the other level. And you're going to want to show that you have that experience. And it's also important, even if you only have undergraduate teaching experience or only have graduate teaching experience, it's important to identify that because the prefixes that we have on our courses are not always very clear because we number them differently from university to university. It's not always clear, is that an undergraduate class or is that a graduate class? So you want to make sure that you clearly identify that. Another thing to identify on the classes is the mode of delivery. Was it campus? Was it hybrid? Was it online? Did you do it all three? That same class, did you teach it in all three ways? And again, that goes back to the job posting because some universities are looking for those that can teach online and they have a skill and ability to be able to do that. And then some people just want campus. They want to know what has been your experience. What are you comfortable with? What are you able to do as far as teaching is concerned in delivering that teaching? So on my CV, I list undergraduate courses and then graduate courses. And then beside the courses, I write in parentheses the mode of delivery. Um, if you don't have that many, you could organize it differently, and you could have undergraduate campus courses if that's all you've taught, or undergraduate campus and then undergraduate online. That's really a preference how you want to do that, but it's important to distinguish between undergrad and graduate, and then the delivery method as well. So that's very clear. All right, so next is heading into the area of research and scholarly work. And so on my CV, I sort of separate these out, and I've seen it both ways. You can separate it out and list first the publications that you have under review by a journal and those that you're developing, and sort of put that in one section by itself. And then right under that, put another section of all the refereed publications that have already been published up until that point. I have also seen where it's just one section on publications, and then the under review and development will be at the top, and then everything else falls below that's been completed. I think it's important to make the distinction in some way, because again, this is a history and progression of the work that you've done. So it shows all the publications that you have, what you've just finished, and what you're working on next. So if you make those distinctions in those sections, then it's easier for someone to sort of follow your research agenda on your CV. Grants and contracts is another area. It's kind of a mixed bag. There's universities that require their faculty to have grants, to get grants, apply and get grants. There are some that want faculty, you don't have to get them, but you at least have to try and show that you're trying to get those grants. And then there's other universities that it's not an expectation for faculty to get grants at all as part of their scholarly work. So it really, again, goes back to your audience and what the expectation is in the job that you're applying for. But what I would say here is, if you have anything, especially as a doctoral student, if you've been given a grant for conference travel, if you have any sort of fellowships, if you are working on a grant project with a faculty, or worked on a grant faculty as a on a project, faculty on a grant project, I'll get it right in a minute. That's what you would want to list in this section for grants and contracts. I was taught, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Dr. Patton, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
So I have assisted on grants outside of academia. Would I put that on here, or I would not list that on here at all?
You know, I don't know. What I do, and I'll talk about it at the very end, I put other professional experience, and this may be a preference thing. When I work, like my other professional experience is the work that I do in the community. Like if I'm working with a nonprofit organization on a strategic plan or a program evaluation, or I've helped them write grants, that's where I put it, because it's not specific to academia. Does that make sense? So that's what I would do with it, because the grants and contracts on a CV in that section, again, this is all related to academia that we're talking about, unless you otherwise specify. So I have other scholarly activities that kind of things fall. I want it to be known to tenure committees that I've done this work in the community, but it's not academic work that I've done. It's not peer reviewed. It's not in a peer reviewed journal or academic journal, things like that. So that's a good question. And yes, please feel free to stop me. I just talk.
No, thank you. I've helped on a couple grants. One was pretty significant. And so I would think that it would be important to mention, just it wasn't sure if I
Absolutely.
can mention it there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. All right, so the next section is conference presentations, which is a part of the scholarly work. It's considered part of our scholarly work. Where most often when we're speaking at conferences, we are talking about our research that we've done and that we've completed. So that's why it's part of our scholarly work. But I separate these out just like I do my publications. I want to show I've submitted proposals to professional conferences. They're under review. And then I want to show all the ones that I've already completed up until that time. And so honestly, I mean, it's a way to show that, but honestly, it's a way for me not to forget. So if it gets accepted, I just copy it, I cut it and paste it down under, write it on the top so I don't forget to include that on my CV. So that's another benefit of separating those out. And it also kind of helps guide me if I'm looking, it's like, oh, wow, I've only submitted one proposal. Maybe I should look and see if I can submit another one before the end of the year. It kind of helps keep me on track too with what I'm doing and what I want to accomplish. So, and this is one of those, this is not a common category. It's one that I just made up for my own CV, is other scholarly works. And so for me, the other scholarly works are things like I've had invited to write an article in a newsletter for NASW. So that's where I put that. I've done work in the community and written up a report, or I've done a presentation, or I've created a workshop and delivered it in the community. That's where I put those kinds of things, is because they're all scholarly in nature, but they're not peer reviewed. They're academic in nature, in that I'm using like workshops or things that I would teach in class, but it's a kind of a scaled down specific topic of something that I might teach in class. So things like that, that's where I put those kinds of things in that other scholarly work. So I can show that I'm representing the university and promoting the university that I'm a part of. At the same time, I'm using my skills and knowledge to help my community at the same time. And then the last part is the service piece, and that is I separate these out because in service, there's sort of three different areas that were looked at, and that's to the university overall and to our department specifically. And then again, anything in the community. So professional organizations that you're doing anything in, or, organizations that you may be helping in the community, that's considered service. I've always been taught that if you are paid, so if it's a contract position in an organization and you're being paid to do the work that you're doing, you can't count that as service. So anything that you're doing pro bono, I count that as service in my on my CV and in my tenure packet. So for university committees, they just run the gamut. I'm on a couple right now. I'm on a strategic planning committee for the university. I'm on a program review committee for the university. I've got a couple of department, college level and department committees that I'm serving on. I used to be on the Women's Issues Committee for NASW, served on that committee and did presentations and surveys and things like that. Currently, I'm on I can't remember what it stands for. It's GAID. It's something about doctoral studies. I don't know why. It doesn't resonate in my brain what that stands for.
Group
But
for Advancement on Doctoral
thank
Education.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's terrible. I'm on their conference planning committee and I can't even remember what it stands for.
No, it's a weird, I think it's a weird acronym too.
Yeah. To me, it doesn't represent what it is that we're doing well. So anyway, but thank you for that. So that's the kind of thing you want to put on there for everyone to understand the service piece. As a doctoral student, that could be Maybe you're serving on a committee or a PhD representative for your cohort, or you're serving as a mentor for someone in the cohort under you. Those are the kinds of activities that you would want to put on the service piece, as well as any service that you have on. If you volunteer, a student volunteer for a conference, you can put that under there. And then, of course, any other work that you may be doing in the community would fit there. So I would say those are the most common parts to a CV. It doesn't mean that you can't put something else that you feel is necessary. I created my own category so I could have a way to identify it. So if there's something else, I would just say make sure that you are keeping it in line with the teaching, the research, and the service piece that we're looking to show that history and progression of our professional development in. So I kind of talked about the length a little bit, and again, the expectation is the more you do, the longer in academia, the more you're going to do, so the longer your CV. So sometimes people kind of get hung up on that because it becomes lengthy. But then again, thinking about the structure too, know your audience, know who is going to see your CV and know what's important to them, and structure it. Either teaching, research, and service, or research, teaching, and service, whatever is the highest priority for that university. And I would say, especially at this point, consult your advisor and your mentor. If you're not sure, where would I put this? Should I put this? Is this appropriate to put on the CV? That they should be able to give you great feedback on where to place it and how to place it on your CV for you. And the last thing I would say is make sure you carefully read it, get as many eyes on it as you possibly can. You do not want typos or mistakes on your CV, because this is sort of a visual of who you are, the quality that you can bring to the program, and what that can be expected, the work that you would do in the program and with the students. So make sure that you edit, have other people proofread, have other people look at it, and make sure that it is as accurate and well put together as possible. And just one last thing on being consistent that I missed is that on your sections, if you bold the section headings for each of the sections on the sheet, make sure all of them are bolded. If you bold and italicize one, make sure all of them are that way, because then it's easier to follow and understand. So if you have one that's bolded and then a section that's bolded, and then 2 sections later it's bolded and italicized, you're like, well, what does that mean? What are they trying to communicate? So keep that consistent. If you have subheadings like undergraduate and graduate, and it's indented, indent all subheadings under every section. If you use bullet points, use bullet points. So stay consistent throughout the whole document, so it's easy to follow and easy to read. So that's all I have to say about CVs. I hope that was helpful. Do you guys have any questions?
I just have one quick question for you right now.
Okay.
So if you have submitted a proposal for a conference and you've decided to withdraw it after they accepted it, would you list that? Do you think it's a good idea to still list and show that it was accepted but withdrawn? Or
Was
you
it
would stay away
because
from it?
okay,
Yeah.
two things that come to mind. Is it you just decided you didn't want to do it, or was it because of COVID and you didn't feel comfortable doing it? Or you know what I'm saying? Like, because we
Okay.
were given some concessions for COVID, that if things were canceled, we could put it on there and show that it was canceled. And in that case, I would say if it was on the conference that canceled it, I would still put in italics that it was canceled. But if you withdrew because you no longer wanted to do it,
Yes.
I don't
That
know.
second option.
Dr. Hawley-Bernardez, I don't want to say anything unethical, but personally, I would not put it on there. I wouldn't
Yeah,
even
I
indicate
probably
that
would
it
not
was
either.
done.
Because I actually saw on the SWR website that some folks had submitted public proposals and they were accepted and withdrawn. SWR published that. Like you can find that for I think last year's SWR. But
Uh-huh.
for CSWE or SWR, I just wondered if you would advise against that because I actually had a paper that was accepted for CSWE, but I withdrew it. And
Uh-huh.
so I think I don't need to put it on there based on what you're telling me. So I'll just stay away from that.
Yeah. Personally, I wouldn't. If a search committee takes the time and sees that because it's published on the conference website, then I would have a good reason why I withdrew it, prepared as an answer just in case they researched it and asked me.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But I would not, personally, I wouldn't put it on the CV.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you, Dr. Patton.
Dr. Patton, I have been a field instructor for a number of years. Would I list that anywhere on here? Is that important information? Not so important because it's not research kind of based?
I do. I think it would be. I would list that under other professional experiences is where I would put that.
Yeah, I would too.
Yes, I do think that's very important. Good questions. All right. Well, I will move into cover letter. Thankfully, this one is not nearly as lengthy as the the CV, but I think there's some important pieces to keep in mind when you are writing your cover letter. So your application packet is usually like a cover letter, a CV. Sometimes they ask for like a teaching philosophy, research agenda statement, a diversity statement. They might ask for a writing sample. There's all kinds of things that they can ask for, but you can almost always count on them asking for a cover letter and a CV. So those are two very important documents that you want to make sure that are well written and put together. And I think the CV is extremely important and highlights and documents all the work that you've done. But to me, the cover letter, when I'm on a search committee, the cover letter is the first thing that I read. It's very important to me because it's sort of a narrative of the person and their experiences and how they've experienced academia and the work that they've done, kind of thing. So that's the first thing that I read. And then I will look at the CV to understand the context of the cover letter based on the experiences. And then I move on to any statements that are required and then the writing sample. But again, it's just sort of a narrative of the applicant that kind of explains the rest of the materials, if you will, that's a part of the application packet. And that's why I see that cover letter as being so important. So what you're trying to accomplish, I think, with the cover letter is introducing yourself as a scholar and what you can bring to the university department and program as a colleague or a potential colleague. And you're trying to demonstrate how your experiences can fit the need of the academic program in the university. So you're trying to do all of this in your letter. So you're not simply restating or highlighting information in your CV alone, but you're highlighting experiences from your CV that provide the context around those experiences to demonstrate how you teach and how you research and how you participate in service and contribute in service-related areas. So essentially, you're trying to persuade the search committee that your experiences and qualifications meet the needs of the program, university, and department. So I don't I don't know outside of academia how long a cover letter typically is. I'm guessing maybe about a page, since the resume is about a page or two at most. But in cover letters for academic positions usually run about a page and a half to 2 pages, so they're a little bit longer. And I've kind of put on this slide the different parts of a cover letter, and there's I think 6 different parts, and each one represents about a paragraph, so about 5 or 6 sentences each, and that's why it tends to run a little bit long. Again, you're going to want to pay attention to your audience. You're going to want to pay attention. Are they teaching university, or are they research university? And so again, this doesn't demonstrate the exact way that you would lay the cover letter out, the sections that you would include in the cover letter. But if it's a teaching university, moving that teaching paragraph up under the introduction, and then the dissertation research after that would be important to understand that, so you can structure your cover letter to highlight what's the priority for the university. For the introduction, it's tradition to sort of include the job title and where, and if it has a position number, and where you found the job listing, or the job posting listed. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time talking. But that's sort of customary to do that, because it helps the search committee know that you've applied for the right job. And I've actually been on search committees where we got the wrong packet. It came to the wrong department. So we had to take it over to someone else. So it's very important, because I may be reading your CV and going, what the heck is this? Because I don't know what job you've applied for. So if you include that kind of helps with that, and make sure that it gets to the right people and you've applied to the right job and the right people are reading it. So it's kind of customary to do that in the introductory paragraph. And then you're also going to want to state your status. Again, if you're a doctoral candidate versus someone who is still working on their proposal versus someone who has already defended, and here's your expected graduation date because you've already defended successfully, that sort of thing. You're going to want to make sure that that's known in the introductory paragraph. If you've not finished your degree, putting that expected defense date and graduation date, and again, make sure that you talk to your chair on that, make sure you're in sync with that date. Because if that's, if you make it through and you get a recommendation, they call on your chair for a recommendation and they give a different date, that probably won't look too good. That you've got 2 different dates going there. So make sure that those dates are correct and in sync with what your chair is thinking too. And so then the last, part of that introductory paragraph would just be a couple of sentences on why you're interested in that particular position. So if you are applying to a teaching university and you're passionate about teaching and you're wanting a position where you can have more focus on your students and the scholarship of teaching and learning and that sort of thing, then that's what you're going to want to highlight in those last couple of sentences. So tie it back into what your passion is and what their need is, so they can see why you're interested in their position, because that gives them a clear idea of how you might fit. And so for the dissertation paragraph, you're not trying to rewrite your dissertation here, and you don't want to cite any scholarship. None of that should be in this section at all. So what you're kind of looking at is writing about 4 to 6 sentences in this section that just sort of demonstrates what your dissertation is and how it contributes to the field of social work, sort of broadly, and then highlight I guess the best way I know how to describe it is it's always the so what factor. Why does it matter? Why does your dissertation matter? It's good and great that it fits in the social work profession, but why is it important? And try to connect it to your topic and your outcomes. Try to connect that to what are the conversations that we're hearing in the social work profession, and how does that connect to that? Those conversations and discussions that the profession is having, so that puts it into context, kind of summarizes it nicely, but lets them know what your research is. So in addition to the dissertation paragraph, then you'll want to talk about future research plans. And future research plans, we call it a research agenda. So if you hear that, that's all that is what do you plan to do with your research in the next 3 to 5 years? What does that look like? What articles, what research studies are you working on? What articles are you thinking of publishing? Do you have any book chapters or books that you're planning to work on? That sort of thing. So a lot of times doctoral students don't have a whole lot that they've done, and it's kind of hard to think about where am I going to go next. So you can also talk about previous publications that you may have had, conference presentations that's related to your research interest, future conferences that you hope to apply to, grant projects that you want to develop, those sort of things. So the idea and sort of the purpose of the paragraph is to demonstrate that you have a coherent research trajectory, and that you have been and you intend to continue to be productive with your research and scholarly work. So that's sort of the purpose of this paragraph. And then you probably have noticed the similarities in the 3 areas: teaching, research, and service, just like with the CV. But the next paragraph is the teaching paragraph. And again, this is not a sort of a regurgitation of your teaching philosophy, because it's much longer than a paragraph, or it should be. But you can certainly use your teaching philosophy statement to sort of start this paragraph, and maybe take 2 or 3 sentences at the beginning of the paragraph to summarize your teaching philosophy. But then you're going to want to give a broad overview of how you specifically bring your teaching philosophy into the classroom with students, and give examples of what that looks like, and sort of bring in your teaching values and your learning goals, and how that matches with the mission and the vision of the program itself. Those are all good things to include in that paragraph. And then the last, well, not the last, but the next to the last, the service paragraph. Again, this is to demonstrate to others what a good colleague you're going to be if they hire you in their program, right? So it should demonstrate how hardworking and collaborative you are, and it highlights your contributions that you've made to the PhD program, to the social work profession, to professional organizations in the community. That's what you're going to want to highlight there. So, if you've been mentoring students, like I mentioned before, or you've served on department committees, certainly mention that in this category. So you're looking to sort of tell a story of your service work and how that demonstrates your collegiality to others. Now, finally, the last paragraph, which is the conclusion paragraph, and it's sort of perfunctory, I guess, if you will, that it just sort of sums up your interest in the position, and then again, demonstrates how you would fit, how you see that you fit based on what you've learned about the university. So just when you think about researching. It doesn't have to be a deep dive into the university unless you want it to be, but you could take about 30 minutes and look at the university. What's their mission? What's their, what is their vision, their values? What is their goal as a university? Look at the department. The same thing, the mission, the values, the goals. Look at the student body. Who are the students that they serve? Just get a good idea of what that is, and understand who they are and how they sort of operate. And that will kind of help you understand, are these my goals and values, and how do I fit, or how would I fit into this department? You can look at the faculty that are there and their bios, and the things that they do, that they engage in, to understand, are these faculty that I want as coworkers, and that my values fit with their values, and my goals fit with their goals, that sort of thing. So that's sort of the cover letter in a nutshell, and in the different paragraphs. Just the last thing, just some tips, I guess. That's what I'll close with. And remembering when you're writing your cover letter, I'd say first and foremost that it should be formal, and it should be written professionally. Again, you want to proofread and get others to read it. You don't want typos, grammar issues, nothing like that in this cover letter. And you also want to be careful with your tone. And I say this because you've been a student, and so sometimes the tone can come across as a sort of a desperate graduate student, doctoral student, if you will, like, I need a job, I just need a job, but that's not the tone that you want to come across. You want to come across as a professional, a colleague. This is who I am as a colleague, and who I would be as a colleague in your program. So I would say be careful of that, and having others read it would be important to understand if you're using that collegial tone. Tailor your letter to your audience, be clear and concise. And then I wrote, don't use excessive jargon. So that's, especially if you're in a specialty area, sometimes you have your own language, and I may not understand what that is. Even though I'm a social worker, I'm not in your specialty area. So if you put that jargon, that is kind of confusing and off-putting sometimes to people. So, well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, y'all.
Thank you so much, Dr.
So I guess I know we're kind of out of time, but I talked a lot, but I didn't know if there were any last comments or questions.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, good.
I was
No,
taking
for me,
notes.
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Well, good. Well, if you guys have any questions or anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to either of us. I'm sure anyone would be more than happy to talk with you more. All right.
And I do have a few of you in advising, so if you have questions, bring them with you.
That's a great idea.
I have you next week. Maybe I'll email you my CV.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Great ideas. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, then thank you guys so much for joining. Our next one will be on November 17th about planning and organizing your dissertation. So third-year students, maybe you should already know some of this stuff, but first-year students and second-year students, definitely this is going to be an important one. So look forward to seeing you guys there. Have a great evening, and let us know if you need anything.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you
Bye.
later.
Bye.